This is Join Us in France, episode 407, 407. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we talk about France, everyday life in France, great places to visit in France, French culture, history, gastronomy, and news related to travel to France. Today, I bring you a conversation with the lovely Jennifer Gruenke about how she went from being an accidental Francophile to moving to Paris. Lots of actionable tips about where to look for a place to rent in Paris, woes about opening a French bank account, how Americans can join the French healthcare system, how folks on a budget can move to Paris. Yes, it can be done, and lots more gems of that sort. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service and my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the VoiceMap app. And you can browse all of that at my boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. And there is a newsletter to go along with this podcast. And get this, I will email everyone next week, possibly twice in the same week, because I am almost ready to publish the bootcamp page, and I also have a page that I want to publish about les ponts. Les ponts. If you don't know what that is, you better open the email. I finally have all the info I need for the bootcamp, so that page is going to go up very shortly. If you are new and you haven't signed up for the newsletter, go to joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. One of the best ways to make sure you'll continue to get my emails is to reply to me. I usually ask a question in the course of the emails, and if you reply, it lets the powers that be know that I'm not spamming you. You really want to hear from me. Speaking of spamming, I've noticed that a lot of people tried to join the newsletter and it didn't work. So the request to join went in a pile called unconfirmed status. And I had been aware of that, but I hadn't ever searched to see how many people were in there. Turns out there was like 1,500 of them. I was like, whoa, I was shocked. I had to decide, what do I do with these people? So I decided to add them manually. And it's possible that a lot of them won't even remember why they had asked for this newsletter months ago. Some of them over a year ago, and they might unsubscribed, and that's fine. I really don't want to email people who don't want to hear from me, but I needed to do something because there were so many people who were kind of in limbo. Bonjour, Jennifer Gruenke, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie. It's good to hear your voice.
Lovely to talk to you. You have an interesting story that I really wanted to hear about. You are kind of an accidental Francophile, and you moved to Paris. I want to hear all about it.
Yes, it goes back to 2009. I was in my mid-30s, and I was living in West Virginia, teaching at a small liberal arts college. And I had no idea of anything about France. I just, whatever you hear in the news. And I was told about an opportunity through the local Rotary Club. And the Rotary Club has this program called Group Study Exchange, or GSE. And it's an exchange program between two Rotary districts in two different countries. So there was a district in Central France that was exchanging with this district in West Virginia. I had to apply for this and go to an interview, but I don't think I had a lot of competition because there aren't many people in West Virginia who would qualify for this thing where it's like they want a young professional who can take off for a month and go off to France and sort of, live with French people. So I was one of, I think, 5 people who went on this exchange trip. I had never studied the French language, but before I went on the trip, I had a couple of months lead time. Back then, it was even cassette tapes. I had the pack of cassette tapes where I was trying to learn really basic French from scratch. I had studied Spanish in high school, so that helps a little bit just to have the general idea of, conjugating a verb or whatever.
That's great. You didn't do a French in action, did you?
No, I
No?
don't think I had very good accents.
No, French in action is the thing that people used a lot in the 90s. I don't know if it's still in the 2000s. I don't know if it was still used.
Yeah, I don't remember which one it was called. It was pretty old, somebody's old cassette tapes they gave to me. So probably something that was popular in the 80s or something. I don't know.
It works. It's not like the French language changes that quickly.
There's no way that you're going to get fluent or even conversational by studying for 2 months listening to tapes. So I did the best I could.
And by the way, this still holds true for people who do Duolingo and things like that. It helps, but it's not, you can't get even conversational with those things. You can kind of have some familiarity, and that's better than nothing. Unless you take classes with a human, a French native, who will teach you and converse with you and force you to speak French, it's not going to make much difference.
Well, years later, I did end up taking classes, which are much, much better than anything you're going to get on an app or recording. But that's kind of skipping forward in the story a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. So I went to France with a lot of, I think, stereotypical ideas about France. That you think of France and you think of, at least at the time, couture fashion and Michelin-starred restaurants and things like that. The part of France I visited was pretty much the opposite of that stereotypical view of France. So here's a list of all the places we visited on this tour. Montluçon, Saint-Julien, Périgueux, Rodez, Aurillac, Le Puy, and Ambert.
Which are all lovely places, by the way, but not high fashion, not super trendy France.
Exactly. This was the heartland of France. We decided that we had visited the West Virginia of France. So I don't know if they did that on purpose and exchanged the West Virginia of the US for the West Virginia of France. But yeah, if you're, driving through the countryside and the flock of sheep wants to cross the road, you stop for the flock of sheep.
Of course you do. Oh, that's great. I love it. But that did not deter you from your interest in France.
No, I think it really spurred it because I really have no interest in high fashion or Michelin-starred restaurants. And I found that going to all these different little places, they showed us something about their culture, their history that they were proud of. So we went up Puy de Dôme, which is kind of a volcanic mountain near Montluçon. In Saint-Julien, they gave us foie gras, which I don't think I had ever had before. They also do a lot of leather working there. It has to do with the history of the soil or the water or something like that. They had a glove factory. They were making leather gloves, very small factory.
And that's fashion, actually, because they sell those gloves for a very high price because they're all handmade and they're beautiful and they cost a fortune.
Yes, I actually have some still that have lasted all these years that I purchased at the factory in the middle of very rural France. Rodez gave us aligot, which is like a mixture of cheese and potatoes. Mm-hmm. And Le Puy had a different mixture of cheese and potatoes called truffade. Yeah. They were a little competitive about their cheesy potatoes and whose were the best.
Right. But we all know aligot wins.
I do love me some aligot. I tried to make it in the US and it was just not the same because they don't have the right kind of cheese. It melts so that you end up with sort of stringy mashed potatoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you have to. Yeah, just buy it. Just buy it when you're in France. That's it.
Yes, I think you're right. In Ambert, we went to a cheese farm. Yeah. And so the cows were grazed at a particular elevation, and there's a certain kind of plant there that they eat that affects the taste of the milk. And then they put the cheese wheels in this giant cave that's, carved out of the countryside. And they sort of rotate them. So the further back into the cave you go, the moldier the cheese gets. And that's what makes it good.
So you went to what we'd call La France Profonde, the deep France, which is not anything like the deep state. It is like genuine France, really. Just like countryside France is what we mean when we say La France Profonde. And there's plenty of that left in France. People don't realize, but most of France is rural. We have lots and lots of tiny villages in France, and we don't have a lot of space with nothing. We don't have like massive, like this is not Wyoming where you get the national park and that's most of the space of Wyoming. No, what we have is rural with villages every few kilometers.
Yeah, if you look at Google Maps or Google Earth, you can sort of fly over a satellite image of France, and it's almost all farmland.
Yep, exactly. And so still, all of this did not deter you. Still proceeded with your plan.
Yes. I think the thing that really got my attention and made me think of possibly moving to France one day is that the people were extremely hospitable and open. Each location we went to, they would split up the members of this team and give each of us to a family in the Rotary Club. And these were usually older people, because that I think is who mostly is in the club. And of course, in rural France, you're around older people. Most of them are not going to speak English. There are a lot of people who speak English in Paris, especially if they're younger. So they were very patient with us in terms of, I'm trying to speak French with my very little French, and they're trying to speak English with their very little English. But they were just very kind to the group. I think in the US, there's a lot of rural areas, but they tend to have more of a feeling of being closed. I mean, I've moved around the US a lot, and it's very hard to break into community because everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, but it can be that way as well in France. It's just that since you had this connection with the Rotary Club, that really helps introduce people.
Yeah, I think so. There even was one town that wasn't like that, which was really interesting, that out of all of these places, most of them felt very open, but people were more standoffish, like I would expect in the US. So I think it varies by location. And I'm not saying that, all places in the US are like that, or all places in France are like, what I experienced. But in the US, I think France has a reputation for people think that the French are kind of snobbish. And I did not find that to be the case at all. And exactly the opposite. The people are very warm and helpful, and they seem to be interested in enjoying life and enjoying the small things in life. I think is really important. That French people don't on average have as much money as Americans do on average, but I think that they live better lives because they focus on enjoying what they do have.
Yeah, and that's, the thing that you bring up about having this in with the communities, with the Rotary Club, is really important. Now, anybody who's thinking of moving to France, whether you have connections through the Rotary Club or some other association, it helps greatly. Like anybody who moves to France, I mean, maybe if they're going to Paris, directly to Paris, they can do it some other way. But in the rest of France, you really need to join associations for whatever it is that you're interested in. It could be language, it could be theater, it could be photography, it could be soccer, it could be anything. But do join the local clubs that kind of have something in common with you, because that will give you a lot of, you'll meet a lot of people who will be interested in interacting with you. But if you met them on the street, it would be different. They don't know you from Adam. But if you meet them at the club, then that's okay. It's a cultural difference. And France has a bazillion clubs. We don't have a lot of churchgoers. So in America, maybe you do that by joining a church. But in France, it's the clubs. It's the associations.
Yeah, I have looked online for some associations, and Patricia, that you introduced me to, has given me the names of some groups that I might be interested in for birding and hiking and that kind of thing. So I haven't quite gotten there yet. There also is a website called Conversation Exchange that I have a plan to, combine the goals of getting to know French people and learning the language. It's sort of a search engine that you can find people who want to learn the language that you speak, and then they speak the language that you want to speak. And so, you can do 30 minutes in French and 30 minutes in English, and each of you can practice your language.
But that's if you have enough to do a conversation over the phone. Because I'm thinking of me trying to do that with Spanish. It would be a long 30 minutes because I don't know that much. I don't know enough. You have to get to a point, and that's where maybe the apps are helpful. If you get to the point where you can say a few things, not great, but you're not super comfortable, but you can say a few things, that sort of exchange with a native speaker would get you over that hump.
For me, the only thing that got me to being kind of intermediate was taking classes. I tried the apps. I tried the tapes. There was a computer program, and I forget what it's called. So I tried lots of different things, but nothing is a substitute for actually having a teacher give you the information and then make you learn it so that you have to take a test. So I did that eventually after I had gotten the idea that I want to move to France.
All right. Very interesting stuff. So now, how did the actual move happen? What happened there?
I ended up moving from West Virginia to Tennessee for a different teaching job. And I still was not crazy about teaching, and I was getting burnt out on that. So I hatched the plan to move to France. And of course, in order to do that, I needed money.
Yes.
So the biggest part of my plan was, over the next decade, making enough money that I could quit working and move to France. So this was at the time when the housing market was collapsing. And so I basically bought a foreclosure every year. And then in the summer when I wasn't teaching, I would fix it up and then rent them out. And so after I had 4, I think, rental properties, that was enough income to live off of. I then quit my job and I did one last renovation. I didn't rent it, basically a flipping situation. One at a time, sold those houses. And that gave me enough money in the American stock market, basically, to just retire till I'm old enough for Social Security. I'm 47 right now. I was 42 whenever I quit my job.
Wow. That's really interesting. So are you super handy? Like, can you do everything around the house? Like plumbing and electrical and all that?
Well, I can now.
Okay.
Yeah, my first house was really it needed to be painted, and I put in a laminate floor. That was the level that I was doing.
Yeah.
The last house, I completely redid all of the plumbing supply lines. I rewired the electrical. I hired out some things like the drywall, but that house was really just a complete wreck, and I completely refurbished it. So it's the sort of thing where if you are motivated, you can learn.
Yes. But I think you haven't tried to do that in France. So maybe you'd rather not go that route in France.
No, people really like to watch the progress of these houses because I would put pictures on Facebook and people love the before and after pictures, right? But it's not really my passion. It's not the thing I really wanted to do with my life. It was a means to an end.
Right.
And the end was getting to France. And so I'm here. I'm done. Yes, I have achieved that goal.
Yes. You're not writing a book about renovating houses in France.
No.
Okay. Interesting. Very cool. So now you have the money and you have the desire. How did the rest go?
Yes. So the rest is I had to apply for a visitor's visa, and you have to do that no more than 3 months before you leave. I was delayed in there by the pandemic. I think I would have been able to leave a little earlier if it hadn't been for that. I think it was late October of 2021 that I flew to Atlanta. There are just a handful of the places in the US, these VFS centers where you can apply for a visa. And so you have to travel to them in person because they want to take your fingerprints.
This is different from what Sarla, who was on the show a while back, said, I think she didn't have to go anywhere.
She probably lived close enough. If you live in DC or Chicago or LA,
Yeah, I think she was in Chicago.
then yeah, there's one in Chicago. So she would have just gone to the one in Chicago. I lived in West Tennessee, and
Yeah.
the nearest one to me was Atlanta.
Yeah, okay.
And it was like probably a 5-hour drive. So I just flew.
Yeah.
There was one of these tiny airlines that has commuter flights to the Atlanta airport. So I flew, within one day, so I didn't have to stay at a hotel. And I have a list of fees. I don't know how interested people are in all of the details, but the total cost to get that visa was about $1,000 US.
Okay.
The biggest cost of that is I had to buy a year's worth of private health insurance. There's a company called Mondinsure, Mondassure. It's a French company, and that cost me 468 euros. But of course, it's going to be more expensive the older you are.
Right. Yeah, obviously. Okay. So you got that done. You got your visa started. How quickly did you get the visa?
About 10 days?
Oh, wow. That is so fast.
Yeah, you have to pay for a FedEx pouch, like an overnight pouch. And the VFS center takes all your paperwork and gives it to the consulate. And then the consulate approves you or not. It's in your passport. You have to hand over your passport at the VFS center when you apply. And then there's a sticker that they put on a page in your passport that's your visa. The main thing that they really wanted to look at whenever I was at the VFS center was proof of funds. So really, if you have enough money to live in France, that's the main sticking point. A lot of people are very nervous about whether or not they're going to be accepted. But a visitor's visa is pretty easy to get if you can prove that you have enough money to support yourself.
Right.
So I did a little bit of research on average disposable income in France and in different locations in France, since this is something that people ask a lot on these Facebook discussion groups.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be average in Paris, you need a disposable income of about 2,300 euros per month as a single person, or 4,600 euros per month as a couple with no kids. If you're in Puy-de-Dôme, which is one of those places I visited that's more rural, it's 1,600 euros per month for a single person and 3,000 for a couple with no children. So they want to see that you have a year's worth of that kind of money.
Right. But I mean, I can't imagine living in Paris for that little money. So it can be done, I suppose, but rental itself would be quite a bit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can scroll down and give you the exact numbers, but I'm actually pretty close to these numbers. But you're right, the cost of the rental is by far the biggest expense in Paris. And of course, you can buy or rent a very expensive apartment or a cheaper one. I guess it's all relative. Let's see. So yeah, we can segue into lodging, since that's what I've got next. I did have to show proof whenever I went to sign up for the visa. I had to show proof that I had already rented a place. And I went through the company Paris Attitude.
Okay.
They have a website. You can look at different listings for apartments. I picked 4 that I liked and ranked them and sent them into them. And the agency went to the owners and said, will you accept this person? Normally, if you're applying for a rental in Paris, you have to have a portfolio in French with French documentation. But because this company caters to expats, they will accept foreign proof of income.
Okay. Wow, that's big.
It is big. And so I sent them a copy of my previous year's tax form.
Okay. And that was good enough.
That was good enough to get this. I was doing a 4-month rental.
Right. Let me interrupt for just a second. I have a friend who is moving to France next month, actually, because he's doing a postdoc, and he's moving to Toulouse. And I've known him since he was 5. So, I was friends with his parents. And he asked me for help. And I was at a loss helping him because he doesn't have any other documents that a French rental could take. And so in the end, he had to go through a pro who does this, who helps people secure rentals in France with American documentations. So I think this is what you did was very realistic. You really need to have somebody help you out and convince the renters that your documentation is good enough. That's really, really important.
And I mean, I'm assuming that the name Paris Attitude means that they're just in Paris and surrounding areas. So this isn't helpful for somebody who wants to move to someplace other than Paris.
But every place in France has people like that. You just need to find them.
And it is more expensive. But for somebody like me who doesn't have traditional French guarantees, it really is the way to go.
Right.
So I signed up for that 4-month rental through them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just to get me here so I could, look around and find someplace that I wanted more permanently. And so that first apartment was very small. It was a studio, 21 square meters, which is 226 square feet.
Yeah, that's very small.
It was very small. It was okay for just me, but I would not want to be in there permanently. It was in the 15th and had a partial view of the Eiffel Tower, which was a lot of fun.
Yes? How much did you pay for that apartment monthly?
That one was 1,100 euros per month, including the rent, the utilities, the insurance, and the agency fees.
Okay.
Which is higher than a French person renting through a French agency would pay.
Sure. Yeah, I hope so.
For that size, yes. I actually landed here. I started looking for something more permanent and sort of walking around, looking at different neighborhoods. I contacted some other agencies, but in the end, I ended up going with the same agency to find a year's lease, like a renewable 1-year regular lease. So I moved into that apartment yesterday in the snow, carrying my suitcases on the metro, which was fun.
Whew. Yeah, that sounds difficult, but you managed. I suspect you don't have a lot of stuff because...
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad. So the new apartment is in the 5th.
Moving up in the world.
Yeah, it's near the Luxembourg Gardens. It definitely is a busier area. There's more traffic, there's more noise, but it's not too bad. It's not like it's keeping me awake at night or anything, although I've only slept here once. It is bigger. It's not a lot bigger. The listing said it was 35 square meters. And now that I'm here looking around, it feels bigger than that.
Okay.
It's possible that it's bigger and it was just mismeasured at some point. I don't know. But it's a 1-bedroom. So I can put my mess in the bedroom and have the living room area with the kitchenette as a little more organized.
Yeah, that's nice. That's cool.
Yeah. When I was in the studio, it just felt like everything was always a mess because everything was always in this one room. It's the only room that I have.
Right. Yeah.
Even with just, moving here with my stuff in my suitcases, I had too much stuff for the studio.
Yeah, a studio is very, very small.
Whenever I flew here, this is going back a little bit, I used my airline points to buy a business class ticket. And the advantage of that is it gave me 2 70-pound bags to check instead of 1 50-pound bag. So I was able to get more stuff here with that business class ticket.
Right. But you really have to be good at living out of a suitcase. I mean, even if it's 2 bigger suitcases, it's not a lot of stuff. It's an art.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't found that there's a lot of stuff that I wish that I had brought. Because I can buy stuff here, obviously. But for the most part, I think I did okay with my paring down to 2 big suitcases.
That's great. Congratulations. That would be really hard for me. Like, I don't know how I could manage. That would happen for me. But, it's a different... I don't want to live in Paris. I'd rather be in the countryside and have a house with a little more room. My house probably doesn't cost any more than your apartment.
Yeah, I think that there's a trade-off there. And that's a really good point. That You know, when you're in Paris, there are obviously huge advantages to living in Paris, that there's all of these fantastic museums and that I have easy access to transport to all over the place. But at the same time, you're going to be living in a much smaller place. And I guess the other major downside is you have to dodge the dog poops on the street.
Well, you sometimes have to do that in the countryside as well.
I don't remember that being a problem in Tennessee, but then again, I had to drive everywhere. So I guess I didn't ever notice.
Yeah, it's different. So let's see. What do you have next? Your phone number. How did you manage because when you have US accounts, you need a phone number for two-factor authentication for just about anything, like your bank and everything else. So how did you manage that?
I ported my US number to Google Voice. This is one of these things that everybody tells you to do. And some people will say it doesn't work well for them, but for me, it has worked perfectly. You have to do this from within the US before you leave. So you just go onto the Google website and say, I want to port my number to Google Voice. It costs $20 one-time fee. And what that does is creates, basically it's VoIP, voice over IP, I think.
Yeah.
So it's an app on your phone, Google Voice. So as long as you have a separate source of connectivity, either Wi-Fi or a French phone number with data, anytime somebody calls or texts my old US number, it comes through on my phone here in France.
Which is what I did, by the way. I called your US number through WhatsApp, and here we are talking through your US number.
I'm sitting in my apartment in Paris.
And it works also to get text messages, which is an important part because you need text messages or you can't do two-factor authentication.
Yes. And it's also really handy for people that I knew in the US to be able to text me.
Yeah. So we didn't do this. When we moved to France, my husband got a Vonage account years ago. Okay, we're talking 17 years ago. And that worked for a long time, but then we couldn't get text messages. So the last few years, I think he got a Ting account. We have a dedicated phone with Ting and use that. And we only ever turn it on to when we know we're going to get a two-factor authentication. We don't use it for anything else. Because our French phones, we have an account with Free Mobile. And I have the account that's like $18 a month or something. I'm not roaming even when I'm in the US. And I call the US every day when I do itinerary planning with people. I call their phone, their home phone or their cell phone, and it doesn't cost me a penny. It's really wonderful. And even when I'm in the US, I can call France. I'm not roaming anywhere. It's a really cool plan that's inexpensive, but it didn't get me text messages from the US. So we've had to do this Ting thing. But yours is even more efficient because you had a one-time fee of $20. Done. That's amazing.
Yes. It probably didn't exist 17 years ago whenever you were trying to do it.
No, it did not. No, this is a brand new thing. Oh, but that's really cool that you did that. Other sticking point for most people is banking. We got to go there too.
Banking is something that all of the people on the internet tell you is a really difficult thing whenever you move to France. The problem is that there was a law passed by the US in 2010 that requires foreign banks to file paperwork on US citizens that have accounts with those foreign banks. And the foreign banks, understandably, did not like the idea of the US government telling them what to do. And so they just dropped all their US clients. And so a lot of banks don't want to work with Americans. There are some that do, but they also, it's not easy to open a French bank account, even if you're not a US citizen. They want lots of documentation. So I had a complicated plan for when I moved here. Some parts of it worked really well, some parts didn't, but I have it all worked out at this point. So my plan was to open an account with N26. That's the capital letter N and the number 26. This is a German bank.
Okay.
and it's an online only bank.
Okay.
And you fill out the application online. I had a debit card in my mailbox within a week, and that was very easy. So I can use that. I can load euros into that account and spend them at the grocery store or whatever. That's not a French bank. And people tell me that it's a good idea to have a French bank too, because whenever you get reimbursed for your healthcare, it's supposed to go into a French bank, basically.
Okay.
Which I haven't applied for the healthcare yet, but I'm going to very soon. So I ended up applying for a bank called LCL, Le Crédit Lyonnais.
Yeah.
I applied for a lot of others before that one, and they all turned me down. All of the online banks turned me down. And this LCL is not an online bank. It's a regular bank that you see out there on the street. But I was able to fill out the application online and explained that I don't speak great French. And 3 weeks after I filled out this form, I got a phone call to my French number of somebody speaking English. And they said, "Do you still want a bank account? If so, you can come to the branch and open an account."
Okay.
So I ended up having to go to the branch 5 or 6 times to finally get this account open. So it took time and it took a little bit of effort, but it was a branch that was like a 5-minute walk from my apartment. So it's not too bad to keep going back.
Right.
But it was a lot more hassle than the N26 online bank. But I've got it all set up now.
Okay.
I've got a debit card through LCL. So I've got my French bank. And if anybody asks, I can say that I've got it. There was one lady on the discussion groups on Facebook who said that when she tried to renew her visa, they turned her down because she didn't have a French bank for her visa renewal, which kind of, strikes fear in the heart of expats living in France. The other recommendation I have is a brokerage called Interactive Brokers. And the great thing about this company, and as far as I can tell, they're the only company out there that does this, is they allow me to do an ACH transfer of my US dollars into the account and then do a SEPA transfer out of euros. So I, within the brokerage, trade Forex and basically am able to exchange my dollars for euros and then transfer them out using this free transfer system.
Okay.
I was able to do that whenever I first landed. So pretty quickly, Interactive Brokers wanted me to switch from an American account to a European account, which I did. I now have a Irish account with Interactive Brokers, and I have also transferred money from my Irish account into my French account without any problems. The great thing here is that this is the cheapest way to get my money from dollars into euros. The transfer of the dollars in and the euros out doesn't cost anything.
Okay.
And the currency exchange is a flat fee of $2 for any amount up to $200,000.
Oh, wow.
So, if you are exchanging $10,000 at a time, $2.
Wow. And I've heard, I don't know, I've heard of the company Wise that used to be Wise Transfer. And I don't know if they do something similar, but it sounds like a lot of expats use that as well. So maybe that's worth looking into as well.
Yeah, I looked at that. They're the best if you only want to transfer a small amount of money because they charge you based on a percentage. But if you want to transfer $10,000 into whatever that is in euros, you're going to be paying, more than $2 in terms of currency exchange. So if you're going to move here and be paying, all your expenses, Interactive Brokers is definitely cheaper than Wise.
Very good to know.
Yes.
Very good to know.
It's a little more hassle. It's something that you have to set up in advance because they are worried about money laundering. And so they don't want you to transfer in dollars and then immediately transfer out euros. So they want you to let it sit there for a month or two. But while it's sitting there, you can put it in whatever stocks or funds, You can buy whatever funds you want. It's a full brokerage. So that was part of my plan that worked really well. The part that worked less well was I was trying to set up a French internet bank, and that did not work at all.
But it worked out in the end. Did you try Crédit Agricole with all the banks that you tried?
I did not. I think other people have told me that that's worked for them.
Right. I've heard that it works for some people as well. But so it's worth trying. I just wanted to know if they had rejected you or not. Okay.
They did not. I think I tried their internet bank and that rejected me. So you have to go to the full bank.
Right.
Basically, if you're an American, you're not going to get a French internet bank at this time.
Yeah.
It might change in the future, but right now.
Right. Okay. So it looks like you had something about expenses besides housing and visa.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about the cost of healthcare because that's something that people ask about a lot. So after you've been a resident of France for 3 months, you sign up for French healthcare. And this basically means that you get reimbursed for 70% of the cost of most medical procedures based on a predetermined schedule of prices.
Mm-hmm.
They have these 2 sectors, Sector 1 and Sector 2. Sector 1 is a doctor that will charge you according to this predetermined schedule of prices. And Sector 2 is they can charge you more. And that extra is not reimbursed at 70%. You have to pay all of the extra. So the 70% reimbursement is only on 70% of the Sector 1 fixed prices.
So let me expound just a tiny bit on that. The difference is that there are some specialists who are in high demand. For example, eye specialists, some dental specialists, but it's mostly the eye doctors, the eye surgeons and people like that. They always, I haven't met one who didn't go by the more expensive. But they tell you at the beginning, like when you make the appointment, very often the secretary making the appointment will tell you, Dr. So-and-so charges X amount of money. And you know this. It's not a big surprise. And the other types of doctors who do this are what I call the gurus. If you want to go see a general practitioner who's an acupuncturist, somebody who does natural blah, blah, blah medicine, they usually charge more. Because what they're selling is guru services. They will tell you about holistic blah, blah, blah. You're paying for the different approach to medicine that is usually more expensive. But if you want to see a general practitioner, it's $25.
Yes, which seems impossible for an American because we're used to paying a lot more.
Yeah, they don't believe it. Americans are like, no, can't be that. Surely. I'm like, no, really, the doctors in France get paid $25 and they usually talk to you for 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And they are getting paid $25 for that time. That's it. Of course, they don't have huge medical medical school bills because medical school is free in France. They don't have large insurance bills. They don't have staff usually to pay. They don't have to pay for people doing all these different insurance systems because we're all pretty much in the same health insurance system. The system is much simpler in France, but it's also much, much, much cheaper.
Yes, it is, which is a good thing. And what that would cost somebody like me is 6.5% of whatever capital gains profit I would have, because that's what I'm living off of now, with a deduction of the first 20,000 euros worth don't count. So if your annual income is less than $20,000, you don't pay anything.
Oh, I see. Okay. Wow.
Above that, it's 6.5%, which seems like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, because, unless you need really specialized eye surgery or highly specialized surgery in whatever, you're not going to need to go to the higher cost doctors for the most part. If you choose that, that's different. But if you choose to go the cheapest route possible, it can be done, unless you really need something very specialized. So have you found France to be an expensive place to live?
I've been surprised that it's other than the cost of housing for Paris. Groceries are cheaper than I thought they would be. And I go to Lidl. I don't know how you say that in French. Lidl?
Lidl.
It's hard to say. And they have good produce.
Yeah.
That's fresh, and most of it's from France, but it's cheaper than what you would get at the corner grocery store. But even the corner grocery store is not that expensive.
Right. So you'll see when it's seasoned for the summer fruit, they don't taste as good from Lidl. So if you want to buy nectarines, apricots, things like that, I stopped buying them from Lidl because they're not as good. But if you're buying a cabbage or potatoes or onions, it's the same. They're exactly the same. You can't really tell the difference in flavor, but you will pay a lot less at Lidl than you do in other stores. Especially if you go to the open air markets, they tend to be the most expensive way to go most places in France.
Which kind of surprised me because you would think that would be buying direct, but I guess it's not.
Well, it's a different skill because the people who sell at the open air market, they have a niche. They know what they need to bring to the market, what sells and what doesn't. And because they have a niche, they can expect more money. But there is one open air market at Toulouse that is famous for being the cheap one. So every city has its cheap one somewhere, but maybe it's not convenient to go to it. You know, I never go to the cheap market in Toulouse because I would have to take the car and park and blah, blah, blah. By the time you do all that, it defeats the purpose. So if you happen to live there, when I lived in the city, my parents, we grew up next to that inexpensive market. And my mom went a lot in the morning, but it was easy. It was close. So it sounds like you have figured it out. Now, the one thing that I wonder what's going to happen is, what are you going to do when it's time to renew? I mean, you can't be on a tourist visa forever.
So I have a visa that allows me to renew it every year. So I'll do that here from within Paris. After 5 years, I will be eligible for a 10-year visa. And I will also be eligible for citizenship. Now, applying for citizenship takes at least a year and often more.
Oh, yeah.
So once you get to that 5-year point, people apply usually for both citizenship and the 10-year visa at the same time, which you can do. But I mean, I don't know.
But it's still a 10-year tourist visa.
No, that 10-year visa would allow me to work if I wanted to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So after 5 years on visitor's visa, everybody, I mean, assuming that you get the 10-year visa, it's not absolutely guaranteed, but assuming that you get that visa, then you could work. So if there's somebody out there who has enough money saved that they could live here for 5 years without working, you know, get their French skills up to snuff and then get a job, that would be a possibility.
Well, okay. That's if everything goes well along the way. Which
it's definitely not a guarantee.
Yeah, it might. I mean, it could. It's possible. Wow, what a story. And so are you, at this point, I mean, you've only been in Paris for a few months. Are you hoping to stick it out, to stay for several years?
I really like it. I mean, I had come here with a plan to stay for at least 2 years because I think it takes that long to sort of get over the newness and to really start to get into the culture. But yeah, I like it as much or more as I had imagined all those years planning to come. Paris does not disappoint. It's just a magical city. And I know it's not for everybody, and not everybody is a city person. But even though I'm not really a city person, but I'm in the US, Paris is this place where you can walk down the street and see the flower markets displaying their flowers, and you can see the produce markets with their beautiful displays. And you can stop at an ancient church and look at the stained glass windows and go to the market and buy a carrot. And it's the best carrot I've ever eaten. And so I'm still exploring and discovering and having a great time.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you know, Paris is, even for me who lives in rural France, well, not super rural, but, you know, nothing like Paris. When I go, usually it's like an assault on the senses. So much happens around that it would take me a year to see that much. The stuff you see in a day in Paris, it would take me a year to see that in my little corner of France, because it's just not so many people. Like when you have so many people in a small space, a lot happens. It's really interesting. You know, it keeps you really charged, I guess is the word.
And that's why I chose Paris over those more rural places that I visited at first. Whenever I came here as a tourist with some friends, I was not expecting to want to move to Paris, but I came here and thought, I will never get bored in this place.
Oh, no, yeah, you can't get bored in Paris. You'd have to really try to get bored in Paris. Whereas the rest of the country, I mean, there's other big cities in France, obviously. So any big city could fit the bill. But if you're not in a city, it's easy to just get into your routine and not get out very much, not unless you have things you want to do. You go to a club, you go to a this, you go to a that, practice, rehearsal, whatever. Then yes, you get out. But otherwise, it's so easy when you're in the rural parts of France to just live within your little world and not get much stimulation, which is not ideal for people who just move here, I think. It's better if you have stimulation all the time, which Paris definitely is stimulation all the time.
Yeah.
All right, Jennifer, we've been talking for a long time. Is there anything you want to add to this, or did we pretty much cover it?
I think we covered everything I had. I have a list of links that I can forward to you to put on your webpage.
That would be really helpful, yes. Because people, if they want details, will have what I call guest notes. Whatever the guest sends me to share, I will put on that page because people do want the details. Some of them do, anyway.
Yeah, the rules change all the time. And they've changed, in that 10-year period where I was sort of planning. I watched online as the rules were changing. So it's good to keep up with all these links on your own if you're somebody out there who wants to move to France.
Yep. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer, and best wishes in your new apartment. I hope it's comfortable and as lovely as the other one. Although with the 5th arrondissement, you can't really go wrong, can you?
Yeah, it's great.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so, and you can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you all for supporting the show. Some of you have been doing it for a long time. You are amazing. And a shout out this week to a new patron, a single new patron, James Olson. Thank you so much, James, for becoming a patron and making this podcast possible. The bootcamp and the newsletter have taken up a lot of my time this week, but I hope to record a new video with Elise and publish it to my patrons and hers before you get this new episode. Elise, how is your Patreon going?
Oh, my Patreon is going very nicely. Thank you, Annie. I would like to give a shout out to 3 new people, and that is to Jerry, to Teresa, and to Terry. It rhymes, but it wasn't on purpose, actually. Thank you very much for being new patrons of Elise's Corner. And just to let everybody else out there know that all of your patronage is very much appreciated, and you can join me by going to the page on Join Us in France or by going directly to the site on Patreon.
Right, and that's patreon.com, patreon.com/Elise Art, ELYSART, and thank you very much.
And thank you all.
If you're preparing a trip to France and listening to as many episodes as you can to get ready, keep listening, because that's a great way to prepare your own trip to France. But you can also hire me to be your itinerary consultant. You purchase the service on joinusinfrance.com/boutique. And right now I have 1 spot left in October. And after that, all the new appointments will have to be in November. So it's a very popular service. And here's how it works. When I get notified of a new purchaser, I send an email with a form to fill out. That may take me a few hours because I like to sleep. And I'm the one doing it. It's really me. It's not some service or whatever. Then you fill out a document to tell me what you have in mind. We make a phone appointment and we chat for about an hour. And then I send you the document with the plan we discussed. It's amazing how good it is for me to talk to listeners and help them craft a great trip to France. They always tell me how happy they are to be talking to me, but it really goes both ways. Without you listeners, the podcast is kaput. So it's really fun. And I always learn something like about what people really want, what are they looking for, that sort of thing. And so it's really, really helpful. And if you can't talk to me because I'm all booked up, you can still take me in your pocket by getting my GPS self-guided tours on the VoiceMap app. I've produced 5 tours, and they are designed to show you around different iconic neighborhoods of Paris. VoiceMap technology makes it really easy to find your way around Paris, whether it's your first time or your 10th. Take a look at these tours. joinusinfrance.com/boutique. This week in travel news, next weekend we'll have the Weekend du Patrimoine in Paris and everywhere else in France. I have to say that it's complicated getting to the most popular sites in Paris, even on the Weekend du Patrimoine, because these sites are forcing people to reserve a free ticket online. Now, it's a free ticket, but you still have to have a ticket. And you never really know when the reservation system is going to open. And when it does, it's usually sold out within minutes. This year, I was keeping an eye on the visit of the Élysée Palace. And by the time I saw a link, it was all booked up. Now, in the rest of France, la province, as we say, there are a lot of fantastic places to visit, and they are not fully booked up 2 weeks before they are open to the public. There are so many that I couldn't possibly list them here. But suffice it to say that if you're in France next weekend and you would like to participate in something, Google Weekend du Patrimoine and the name of your city or zip code. I bet you will find some really great stuff. And the local newspapers usually cover it as well. The other thing that's happening next weekend in Paris is that on Sunday, the 18th of September, cars will not be allowed in a huge area of Paris, covering the first 4 arrondissements, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and the Champs-Élysées, which I think most of it is in the 7th or the 8th, I can't remember. Or perhaps it's at the boundary between the two. So taxis, buses, and emergency vehicles will be allowed, but they'll have to drive super slow. So it'll be mostly bikes, scooters, rollerblades, people on foot, of course. This is going to be a great time to ride a bike in Paris without worrying too much about being hit. But remember, if you are a pedestrian, look both ways before stepping onto the curb, because those bikes can go fast and they will surprise you. The mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, is doing everything that she can to get cars out of Paris. This has led to many of her constituents hating her with a passion. But I think all French cities should push private cars as far away from city centers as possible. It'll take years, but I hope we get there. This week in French news, Jean-Luc Godard died this week. He made a lot of famous movies, including Breathless, which is à bout de souffle in French. I normally don't talk about famous people passing away, but this passing coincided with a new development in French law having to do with death with dignity, as they call it in Oregon. In France, we're really conservative and really slow when it comes to these things. People who are going through terrible suffering at the end of their life can be given, big amounts of painkillers, sleep medications, and things like that. But that's about where it stops. And this week, Emmanuel Macron said he wanted to query the people of France, the medical professionals, the institutions that make decisions on ethics. So there's going to be a big kind of national consultation on this. No changes have been decided on yet, obviously, but they're thinking about it. So Jean-Luc Godard died with the help of doctors, but he had to do it in Switzerland, where this is allowed. In France, he wouldn't have been able to do what he did, although he lived most of his life in Paris. This has obviously generated a lot of conversations, especially from people like me who weren't very much into his movies. I really don't enjoy serious movies. I love serious books. I love literature. But movies, no. So I'm a bookworm all the way. What can I say? So adieu, Jean-Luc Godard. And thank you for forcing us to think about death with dignity this week in France. It's not a fun topic to think about, but we have to do it. For my personal update this week, we had a bad hailstorm last night, and my nice new car got little bumpy all over. Yeah. This is the second time we've had a bad hailstorm in the 17 years we've lived here. And both times I thought, I really need to get a carport. And I'm really, again, going to need to get a carport. Of course, it's going to be covered by insurance. And they do a good job usually straightening those little bumps from hailstorms. But still, yeah, it's upsetting. My husband's car got it worse though. So way to go, electric car. You have solid metal. I haven't had any fun trips this week, which is sad, but I have a few lined up with Elise, and I am getting really excited about the boot camp. We are going to have to cap the attendance to 40, I think, and that's even more than Elise wanted, really, to tell you the truth, because it's a big group for her to talk to, and we're going to do visits every day. But that means that as soon as you get the email opening the bootcamp page on joinusinfrance.com, save your spot immediately. They're going to go fast, and I'm not going to be able to bump anybody up. That's just how it's going to work. First come, first serve. Something really unexpected and wonderful happened this week. So I have the best listeners. This week, Brian Revel, who was on episode 402 of the podcast, he's been a wonderful supporter and he's been in touch with me a few times over the years. And when we recorded the episode, he said something like, you should get the Legion of Honor. And I just laughed it off. I just said, that's ridiculous, And I didn't put it in the podcast because that's like, boast. And I knew it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, okay? But he wrote to the president anyway, and he got a really nice response from someone called Brice Blondel, who wrote on behalf of the president and said, it was a nice letter in French, nice form letter in French. And he said that the president is delighted to hear that I'm doing this podcast to share my love of France with everybody. How about that? Thank you so much, Brian. It made my day, and I will have that letter framed because I love it that much. And the other thing I would really love, and I'm not saying that you need to do it, Brian, but someone, I hope, will do it. I would love for the podcast to get its own Wikipedia page. I have no idea how to do that or if it's ever going to happen, but I would really like that. I would like to find Join Us in France in Wikipedia. Show notes and a full transcript for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/407, the numeral. Next week on the podcast, an episode about the mysterious standing stones of Brittany with Elise. And all the places that you can go to see them, of course. Send questions and feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France travel podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2022 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.